Destroyed a statue honoring Confederate war dead. They pulled it down yesterday while cops stood by and did nothing.
Hold it now.
Well, you'd think the government allowing policy decisions to be made by mob violence would be a big concern among liberals. It's not a good precedent to set, but they don't seem bothered at all. Instead, a top priority on the left right now is securing a rollback of free speech rights for you and me. Yesterday on MSNBC, Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors said the First Amendment's protections don't apply to whatever is deemed to be hate speech.
We're seeing a movement of white nationalists rising up because they've been emboldened by Trump and his government. Hate speech, which is what we're seeing coming out of white nationalist groups, is not protected under the First Amendment rights.
Donald Trump got a lot of criticism after the violence broke out in Charlottesville, Virginia. And he originally said that, hey, there's violence on both sides. Later on, he finally released a statement 48 hours later condemning the white supremacists who carried out the acts of violence. However, now it seems like he's taking that statement back. In fact, he believes that there are members of the alt-right that are wonderful people.
On both sides, sir? You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
The Antifa, there's a group of anti-fascists called the Black Bloc, which do tend to get violent. Their idea is, look, nonviolence hasn't worked, and we are going to try to stop this. But they wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have been anywhere near there had it not been for the fact that white supremacists, neo-Nazis, were out scaring the living daylights out of most of the people in that town.
It used to be that I thought there's no such thing as a thought crime, or there shouldn't be. And one of the problems is that you never really know, this is what I used to think, you never really know what people are thinking in their heart. But I've been watching CNN for the last hour, and it turns out that I was wrong. They have quite a few experts on who are reading people's inner thoughts right now. So CNN has gone full psychic network, and I'm watching. They may have some kind of CNN training program, something like that, in which they go, and I don't know if they do any astral projecting or anything like that. But everybody on the panel seems to have developed kind of an ability to look into people's souls.
When the president won't unequivocally stand with you for more than 12 hours against Nazis, when the president won't stand with you for more than 12 solid hours against Klansmen who showed up with guns, who were prepared to kill people, you feel vulnerable. You don't know if your children are safe. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn. This is not, some soundbite game. People need an assurance from the president that a terrorist movement that is gaining ground in our country is going to be met with the full force of the law. Antifa are people who go and they try to push back on these guys. Sometimes they go too far. I think that is a significant issue. But it is not the case that they are going around building an armed movement to go and kill people. And listen, if you can't separate as a leader a massive threat from a minor threat, if you can't tell the difference between a serpent and an earthworm, you have no business leading. And that's the problem we have now. We have a terrorist movement in this country aimed at black people and Jewish people, and the president, who is the father of a Jewish daughter, will not stand with us, and that's terrifying.
Legally, is hate speech protected? Absolutely. Should it be? That depends on where you fall on the issue. When you're talking about white nationalism and white supremacists, yes, there is a lot of hate speech from that side. And she's absolutely right. When we talk about issues around Black lives and issues around equality, you know, there isn't the hate that is coming from the other side. Let me put it to you that way. You know, so
well, I guess that all kind of depends on what you think is hateful. I mean, this is, look, let me just say really clearly, I'm against people hurting each other's feelings. I'm for politeness.
No, when you have the KKK and white folks talking about death to Black people, death to African Americans, you know, calling people the N-word.
I agree completely.
That's hateful. No, it's not awful. That's hateful. That's a perfect example of hate speech.
It's absolutely hateful.
And you want to talk about
hold on, wait. So may I ask you a question? I mean, this is a pointless. This is actually kind of the point I was making. Is and I agree with everything you said. That is hateful and it's awful. I'm offended by it.
It is.
But really, what you're saying is you're offended, and that's the problem with hate speech, this fake category that we've made up all of a sudden, because it's entirely subjective. What's offensive to you or hateful to you may not be as offensive to me. We're both American citizens. We both live under the same Bill of Rights.
I agree.
You see the problem. So attempts by the left to ban speech are as bad as attempts by the right to ban speech. So why don't we just call a truce and stop trying to prevent people we disagree with from speaking?
No, I definitely agree with you on that point. It is a slippery slope when you start to try to define what is hateful and what is not. But it is really clear, especially given the images and the video that we saw coming out of Charlottesville, there was a lot of hate speech.
Let me ask you a question, since we're talking about the events of the last couple of days. So left-wing protesters are upset by the existence of Civil War memorials, Robert E. Lee statues, because they're symbols of racial discrimination and hate. If you knew that there were 50 public buildings paid for by taxpayers, maintained by taxpayers in this country, named after a Ku Klux Klan recruiter, would that bother you?
Look, there are buildings in Los Angeles. There was a building in Los Angeles named after one of the most racist police chiefs of the Los Angeles Police Department.
No, there's no comparison. Hold on. This is not a racist police chief. This is the exalted cyclops of the KKK, Robert Byrd, the longest-serving U.S. senator who just died several years ago. Why is there no effort to take his name off these buildings? As a former Klan recruiter, you'd think people would be offended by his name.
Race relations.
They're much, much better than they've ever been in my lifetime. I think this is my personal opinion, I think we talk about race too much. I think those problems are largely behind us. I think we can all profit by our mistakes. I think we've reached a new plateau, and I think it's going to keep going upward, that understanding and race relations. But I think I just think we talk so much about it that we helped, I think, create somewhat of an illusion. I think we try to have goodwill. My old mom told me, Robert, you can't go to heaven if you hate anybody. We practice that. There are white niggers. I've seen a lot of white niggers in my time. I'm going to use that word.
My friend and mentor, Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd was a man of surpassing eloquence and nobility, and I will remember him for many things.
I think you need to give it time. But I think one of the issues is that you can take down all of the monuments, you can change the names of a lot of buildings, but you can't change American history. And I think that's part of what's missing from this conversation. Do I want to see monuments and statues of people who are racist or supported slavery? Not really, but at the same time, I don't completely want to erase American history either, because I want to make sure future generations know what happened. And I think we're in this cycle right now. We're in such a rush to get rid of things that remind us of bad times in our history, and it's like, yeah, it was bad, but you know what? We also have to remember what happened and pass that down in hopes of not repeating it as well.
Well, I think that's right, and also the United States ended slavery around the world, and maybe we should get some credit for that too, don't you think?